Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the March 21st Transportation Commission meeting. We are joined here in person and we're also virtual. Will you please mute your teams if you're not speaking? Before we start with any agenda items, are there any citizen comments on matters not on the agenda? Hearing none, I would turn it over to Chairman Slatt and introduce the first agenda item.
Thank you very much. I have nothing this evening. We can jump right in.
All righty.
Let me share my screen.
The first item is an update to the Athletic Health Club parking minimum and compact cars. It's an action item with staff member Valerie Weiner.
Thank you, Bridget. Hello again, and good evening, members of the Transportation Commission. My name is Val Weiner. Again, I'm a commercial development specialist with Arlington Economic Development, and I'm here to provide an update on some of the parking updates we presented at your February meeting. Tonight, we have two items for your action and comment: the parking ratio for health and athletic clubs and compact car prohibitions. The shared and off-site parking items noted in the original version of the memo that was distributed to you all has been deferred until May. So just to give some context for both of these items, currently, as many of you know, the county parks use is based on minimums. These minimums were established primarily between the 60s and the 80s and do not reflect the public transit expansion, increased density, and the county's multimodal transportation goals. On the screen, we have a couple examples of how we currently park different uses, and it is not consistent across the board in terms of GFA per seats, which can make it difficult to regulate and also difficult to understand as an applicant trying to fill space. So as an example, the parking ratio for athletic and health clubs is significantly outdated and more restrictive than how some of our similar uses are regulated, like outdoor recreation, for example, and when compared to what other jurisdictions are doing, which is closer to our general commercial rate. In addition, gyms are most frequently in site plan buildings, and that ratio is often amended regardless. That shows that even for by right scenarios, the ratio we currently have is no longer appropriate for this use. Our solution or proposal is to remove this use from the parking table so that it defaults to the general commercial rate. So this would change it from a 1 per 50 square foot ratio to a 1 per 250 square foot ratio. Similarly, compact car prohibitions were most recently made restrictive in the early 2000s for all uses listed on this slide, because it was perceived that larger cars were taking compact spots and creating dangerous situations for consumers. But today, staff has noted that since then, prohibitions on something like compact cars doesn't make parking any less dangerous, but it does potentially limit a business's capacity to fill vacant space by making it more difficult to meet parking minimums. So compact car spaces can give flexibility, for example, to a business to meet parking requirements by restriping the lot. This approach is often modified through the site plan process. So similar to the previous proposal, this would remove one more additional amendment that would be needed in that process as well. We are not suggesting changing the permitted percentage of compact cars for right now. Currently, that's capped at 15%. So not all spaces can be compact spaces. We're just allowing the uses on this slide to be able to take advantage of compact spaces to meet parking minimums. And we have a draft motion available for you as well. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you very much. So will you be coming back to discuss the other items at a future meeting?
Yes.
Cool, great. Any commissioner questions on the two remaining portions of this proposal that are before us today, the athletic or health club parking minimums or the compact car spaces amendment?
Yeah.
Commissioner Coleman, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you just explain a little bit on why you decided to remain with the 15% cap on the compact cars? Just so I can understand the rationale behind that.
Yeah, so that is just wasn't in the scope of this update. It is on the list of future updates that we would like to pursue.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Commissioner Lantelmi.
Yeah, I just want to say this is great. I've said this at our other meetings, ZOCO and the earlier Transportation Commission is definitely moving in the right way. The more we can do this with all of our parking requirements, the better. Ideally, I'd love us to move to parking maximums rather than minimums, but this is definitely going in the right direction. So thank you for this and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Commissioner Maradovic?
Yeah, thank you. I also support this. Ideally, I'd like for the county to move to abolishing parking minimums like many other jurisdictions have done, because she's had that spreadsheet up. It was like very complicated, and all of these different regulations for different uses. And then almost every commission hearing we have, it's some site plan amendment for a developer that wants fewer parking spaces than what is mandated, because clearly the market has been for years saying that the regulations are not appropriate and they're too much, given that like we're not in the 1960s pre-metro era. So I mean, Atlanta, Austin, Minneapolis, these are huge cities. Atlanta and Austin, especially car-centric, they've gotten rid of parking minimums, and so I'm hoping that that this county will move in that direction as well, because we've been ready to do that, and we're better suited than many of these other jurisdictions to make that work. So, but I mean, given that that's not an agenda item tonight, getting rid of parking minimums, I'll support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Locker?
I just had a question. What's the difference between a compact space versus a regular space? Is there a certain dimensions? Just curious what how it's differentiated.
Yes, the dimensions are different. I can check and get back to you. I don't remember off the top of my head, but yes, the dimensions are different.
Anybody else?
I actually
Commissioner
have a
Maradovic.
question follow up on Commissioner Locker's. What about are there any rules for what's the enforcement like of a compact parking space? Like what recourse does someone have? Like you park a F-250 in a compact spot. Like what type of violation would that be?
Do you mean if someone were to call the county to complain that they saw a larger car in a non-compact vehicle in a compact space?
This is only on private property, right? So that would be
right.
Okay. All right. Never mind then. Yeah.
Anybody else? I'm very supportive. I would also have been supportive of bringing athletic and health clubs in line with furniture stores, which I actually think they have a little more in common with. I have very recently, as a business owner, become far too familiar with load calculations for fire code. And actually, health clubs and athletic clubs aren't considered to be expected to have a lot of people in them in their square footage, because the expectation that the machinery that you are using in the club is actually taking up a lot of space, which I assume is also why furniture stores have a lower parking ratio, because they assume the furniture is taking up more space than the people will. But yeah, glad to see this moving forward. Hope we'll continue to chip away at our Byzantine and ancient parking minimums and come to a new promised land of easy to understand and hopefully form-based parking regulations. Seeing no other hands going up, I will go ahead and give a motion, which is that I move that the Transportation Commission recommend that the County Board approve amending the athletic or health club parking minimum in Table 14.3.7.A and amending the compact car spaces section 14.3.3.F as outlined in our Transportation Commission memo, or similar? Because I understand the text may change a bit between now and April. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion of the motion? Do we have any commissioners online? I don't think we do. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. That passes unanimously, much faster than when we have people virtually. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Valerie. Chairman Slatt, shall I show on the screen what the compact car dimensions are for the benefit of the?
Sure. Go for it. DES is
Valerie, I
on it.
actually just sent it to you if you want to project it, if that's easier.
Valerie, you muted.
Ridiculous. Yes, just give me 2 seconds.
In case there's a question, I don't know. It was after the vote, so. Do you want me to do it?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Okay. Okay, let me share my screen again. 1 second. Apologies that I didn't have this on hand. Okay.
We're having
So these
some issues.
are the dimensional requirements for off-street spaces. These are the full size and then the compact. So is this a section that you were, or does this answer your question?
I think it just takes a minute to digest because there's a lot of.
Yes, please. Understood. Just want to make sure I'm in the right place.
Put it back on the screen. I was trying to get rid of the resolution issue. Just hang on.
It looks like it's just the length of it, right? The 16 feet is the shortest it could be. Is that right?
Yes.
There we go.
No, 15 feet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you still looking? I'm so sorry. Oh, there we go. So I think it's dependent on the angle as well of the parking spot.
Yeah, most of them are 90. So that's what I'm looking at. So it's 8.5 feet wide versus 8 feet wide and 18 feet deep versus 15 feet deep for most that you would see in a parking garage. Awesome. For the good of the order.
Okay.
Thank you,
If you
Bridget.
didn't know, our staff liaison was a parking planner for quite some time.
It was, but I don't interfere with other affairs. Thank you, Valerie. Appreciate it.
Yep. Yep. Thank you, guys.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have staff member Clinton Edwards here to talk about the proposed service and fare changes as part of the proposed FY 2025 budget. Take it away, Clinton.
Thank you very much. Chairman Slatt, Transportation Commissioners, good evening. As Bridget said, my name is Clinton Edwards, and I proudly serve Arlington DES in the Transit Bureau as the Transit Services Manager. What we wanted to bring before you all this evening are the transit proposed service and fare changes as shown in the County Manager's FY 25 budget. Unfortunately, with the state of the revenues with Arlington County as projected for coming in for FY 25, departments were asked to look at their budgets and make some service reductions or reductions in areas to be able to balance the budget. And with these proposed service changes, you'll see changes as I walk through them on Route 53 with a partial elimination, on the 53, the full elimination of the 62, and partial elimination of the 61. So as I walk through these, if you have any questions, just please stop me as I go through them. So here on the very first route, to orient everyone on the Route 53. The Route 53 is part of the secondary transit network connecting Boston, Marymount University, and the East Falls Church metro stations to Westover and other neighborhoods in the North Arlington, excuse me. Currently, the Route 53 operates peak only service between 6 a.m. and 9:15 a.m. and 2:35 p.m. to 7:39 p.m. Currently in operation, buses operate every 25 minutes during these times, and this route also serves East Falls Church, Washington Liberty High School, excuse me, the Virginia Tech Research Center, and Marymount. So looking at the slide deck for the first portion of this, you'll see this purple line, and see if I can bring up this pointer. The user pointer. Here on this purple line, this is to eliminate the western portion of Route 53 between East Falls Church and Madison Community Center. This western portion of Route 53 has always been underperforming, and due to the budget cuts, we felt as though we could make this elimination of the western portion of the Route 53. Moving on to Route 61. Route 61, just to orient you all on the Route 61. It currently provides a north-south connection across the Roslyn Courthouse area and neighborhoods to the north and south of the corridor. This route currently serves Fort Myers and the Randall Heights neighborhoods weekdays, peak only. Weekdays, peak periods only, similar to the 53, runs a couple hours in the morning and then a couple hours in the afternoon. Here you'll see that the southern portion of the existing 61 through the Randall Heights, Fort Myers Heights, this portion will be preserved, and I'll get into that a little bit later. The northern portion is proposed to be eliminated. Moving on back to the 53, the eastern half of the 53 would be extended to Roslyn via the Clairton Wilson Boulevard, and then pick up the southern alignment of the 61. So as you can see here, the 53, this purple portion would be eliminated. So as the 53 travels here down Quincy, what it would do then is turn here and pick up this southern portion of the 62, what I'll get to next, and then the southern portion of the 61. This will all make sense on a couple of subsequent slides as I continue to go through this. Finally, on the Route 62, the 62 is the maroon line, or the line that looks like a student that is graduating from high school or college with the graduation mortarboard on. The 62, as many of you all are aware, is part of the secondary transit network. It connects Courthouse and Boston along Lorcom Lane with weekday peak service only, excuse me. These buses operate every 30 to 40 minutes between approximately 6:30 and 9:30 in the morning, and then from 3 to 7:30 in the afternoon. This route also serves Washington and Liberty High School. And so I'll take the laser pointer here again, and you'll see the 62 follows this path, goes up here to the courthouse area. Elimination of Route 62. So on this slide, this is all of the changes together. The western portion of the Route 53, the extension of the 53 to Roslyn, the elimination of the northern half of the 61, and then the elimination of Route 62. And then we have it one other way graphically as well, just to simplify it a little bit more. So here you'll see on this slide, the red portion is what we talked about earlier. The western portion of 53 will be eliminated. The entire 62, the northern portion of the 61, and then you'll see the extension of the 53 here to pick up the southern portion of the 61. And all of that summarized together from the previous two slides is here on this slide to the right, where we just show the portion that will be remaining, the new combination of the 53 with its extension and picking up the southern part of the 61. Any questions on these proposed service changes as they are displayed in the county manager's FY25 budget? So total savings, this has created a savings altogether just shy of $700,000, about $350 on both of those routes. How we were able to support these reductions in the service in the budget is that looking at the FY23 performance metrics, the number and the rank, basically looking at the passengers per revenue hour and the passengers per revenue mile, the route 53, all three of these routes, as you can see on your screen, the 53, 61, and the 62, all ranked in the bottom quadrant of the 16 ART routes. As you can see, the 62, based on weekday passengers per revenue hour, was 16 out of 16 routes, and then weekday passengers per revenue mile at 15 out of the 16 routes. So although this is something that we like to propose or look at making any level of service reductions, because of the performance of these routes, we could validate this change. One thing that has to happen in public transit, anytime you make a major service reduction of more than 25% of the revenue hours or miles on a route, is that a Title VI analysis has to be done. And just one thing that I've been saying as we've been going through these presentations is that Arlington Transit is committed to providing non-discriminatory transportation service to all of its passengers and potential passengers. ART and STAR operates its programs and services without regard to race, color, and national origin in accordance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. So part of the two analyses that we are required to do are a disparate impact and a disproportionate burden. There's a lot of information on this screen, so I'll walk you all through it. The disparate impact occurs when the difference between the minority riders and non-minority riders affected by a proposed service change or fare change is 10% or greater than the county average. Taking my laser pointer here, looking at the minority population here in Arlington County, the county average is 39.8%. Each of these routes 53, 61, and 62, only travel in a portion of minority populations that 0.7% for the 53, 4.2% of the route is in minority populations, and the route 62 is 0.7. All of these fall below the average. So if you take that difference, you'll see here the impact for all three of these when doing a disparate impact analysis on minority populations is less than the 10%. So there is no disparate impact found for making these changes. Disproportionate burden occurs when the difference between the low income riders and the non-low income riders affected by the proposed service change or fare is 10% or greater. The Arlington County average of low income population is 16.7%. You will see that all three of these routes, they travel in areas where the low income population exceeds the 16.7% of the Arlington County average, as they are not more than 10% above that county average for the 53 and 62. There is no disproportionate burden found in the analysis. However, for the route 61, 39.9% of that route travels in low income populations as a percentage of the top total population by block group. And that difference is greater than the 10%. The difference between the Arlington County average and the Route 61 average is 23.2%. So there actually is a disproportionate burden for the Route 61. When doing a Title VI analysis, agencies, Arlington Transit included, are required to provide some level of mitigation strategies when there is a disparate impact or disproportionate burden found. So the mitigation strategies that we have for the Route 61 is that due to most of that route's alignment being within walking distance of several out routes, that would be one of the mitigation strategies. And those out routes are routes 43, 45, and 55. Any question on the Title VI results, the results of the Title VI analysis?
Commissioner Flores?
For the low income population by block group, I just want to highlight that Route 62, I believe the difference should be 5.1%. So it is still less than the 10% impact.
You are correct. Thank you. Let me make that
No worries.
correction. Thank you for
Happens.
pointing that out.
No worries. Happens to me all the time. The question that I had in addition to this to clarify was if you could detail how y'all define walking distance.
And when we're detailing walking distance, we're talking about within a quarter. We're talking about a quarter of a mile walking distance, which is generally the standard for, I guess, the transit elasticity before people will think about looking at other options. Anything more than a quarter of a mile.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Coleman? Commissioner Furman?
My first question was, as a frequent art writer, I was curious about how do we collect the both minority population data as well as the low income rider data? Where does that come from?
That actually comes from, and I have the report here with me. Let's see if I can actually locate it. What I will say is that it comes from an Arlington County developed, um, analysis. And as soon as I can put my hands on it, I will be able to specifically give that to you. Let me locate that and I will answer that question in a few moments. I have it right here. I just need to find it here.
Thank you. And if it would be possible to get the analysis of the overall report, if it goes into details on other routes, I'd be interested in that as well, if that's possible to have released to the commissioner, to the public.
Okay. Yes. And the demographics were based on the U.S. Census Bureau, the 2017 to 2021 ACS survey based on the 5-year averages. And so that is where the demographics come, but the Arlington County's Department of Housing and Community Development defines the low income households.
I think I can
their
answer your question, Commissioner Furman. It's not based on the demographics of the people who are actually riding the bus. It's based on the demographics of the areas that the route goes through.
Thank you.
Because that's the data we have.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Commissioner Coleman.
All right, thank you. Just have one question about the financial practicality of maintaining the existing Route 61. There's a pretty significant variance, right, between the average and the low-income populace who uses that particular route. And as a frequent rider of it, when I first moved to Arlington, I really relied on it to get to the Rouse down in Roslyn. So I recognize there's a great need for it. And can you explain, based on your earlier statement of about what $350,000 saved, was it $350,000 per route change? What would be the financial feasibility of maintaining Route 61 as it currently stands?
That would essentially go through as the public comment period. That would just basically, if we kept the 61 as is, it would add that 300 and some $1,000 back into the budget. But that would be a decision that would be made at the board level once they make a determination on the FY25 budget.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Hussein.
Yeah, I'd also a question about the 61. Is there a breakdown of the difference between like the population of northern alignment versus the southern alignment and what that looks like? Because it just looks like it's probably the total route, but if we're getting rid of that northern part, what does that impact look like?
That, as we use one of the tools that the state provides us, it has a breakdown of those block groups by the 61. So once we are able to provide that analysis, you can see as far as the low income and minority on the northern half of the 61 and then on the southern half of the 61. So it's very graphically laid out.
Commissioner Flores.
Do you mind going back a slide to the numbers? Yeah, the metrics. So I find it interesting, the disparity between the numbers, particularly for the 53 route, and I guess the 61 route. The weekday passengers per revenue mile, it isn't the absolute lowest, even though it is the second lowest of the weekday passengers for revenue hours. What made your team choose to go with these three routes, and what other routes were in discussion to be dropped, and why weren't they gone with instead?
So we built this, and I guess I'll back this up a little bit. The recommended proposed service changes that you see here follow the path of the transit strategic plan. What the transit strategic plan had recommended in year one were these changes. However, there were additional enhancements that went with it. Due to the budgetary constraints, we weren't able to do the enhancements at this time, but many of you all may be aware that part of our recommendation with recommending the elimination of the western portion of the 53 was also the introduction of a micro transit in that western portion where the 53 western portion would be eliminated. And of course, because of the budget constraints, we aren't able to implement that. However, we are still moving forward with doing a micro transit study in partnership with the State Department of Rail and Public Transportation that we can analyze and look to see where microtransit would be good. We're going to analyze the entire county so that we can figure out if microtransit would work well for Arlington County.
Okay.
So these are I guess that's a long way of saying these are direct recommendations out of the transit strategic plan.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Hussein, back to you.
Yeah, no, sorry, that makes me think, just in this place, when we're talking about microtransit as, let's say, replacing some of these eliminated routes, are we also thinking about like, does that include on-demand transit as well? Because I feel like could potentially be a cost-effective option, if we're thinking about, okay, well, these fixed routes are not doing so well and we have to get rid of them, but my guess is that the people that are on these routes probably still may want or need public transit options. And I don't think just taking it away from them is a good enough option. I think providing an alternative grant within the context of our budget, but still thinking about, okay, are there other cost-effective options we can be thinking about?
And that's exactly why the recommendation in the TSP was coupled with the introduction of a micro transit installation or on demand, same type of thing, just still providing some level of public transportation, even though your traditional fixed route, you were showing ridership numbers and passengers per revenue hour and mile, as you see here on the screen. So they were all coupled together so that there would still be some level of opportunity for persons to be able to utilize public transportation, just looking at from a different lens.
Okay, that makes sense. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? All right. Is there more? I feel like there's more.
Unfortunately, there is more, yes. On top of with the proposed route reductions, there is a fare increase that was introduced to the board during the recess meeting in February to align with WMATA. Many of you all may be aware of the budget crisis that WMATA was facing going into the Christmas holiday. Their first glance at it was that they were going to have a $750 million budget deficit. So part of their recommendations as they are looking to close their budget hole is that they have advertised up to a 25% rate increase on Metro Bus, Metro Rail, and Metro Access. However, right now they're looking at doing only 12.5%. And so as part of the county's FY 2025 operating budget, the board will be considering the adoption of fare increases for ART and STAR commiserate with the WMATA increase. Of course, as I just previously said, the WMATA increase is current proposals for 12.5% increase, anticipating this to be adopted at their April board meeting on the 25th of April. Looking how the 12.5% fare increase would affect ART and STAR passengers, the base fare for ART would go from $2 to $2.25, and then seniors and citizens and persons with disabilities, it's actually $1 to $1.13. However, no one really, we believe, carries pennies, so we rounded it up to the nearest nickel. So $1.15. Same thing with STAR at the 12.5% increase. Zone 1 would be from $4 to $4.50. Zone 2 would go from $5.50 to $6.20. And Zone 3 passengers fares is proposed to be increased from $9.50 to $10.70. And that's all on the STAR fare increase. Right now, the sequencing with this is that the county board is to vote on the proposed budget a couple of days before the WMATA budget. And if the WMATA budget does go through, then we would have to do implementation and finalize it sometime after they actually vote to move forward. So however WMATA ends up moving is how our fare increase will move as well. So I have nothing but some unfortunate news for you all this evening. That's the end of my actual presentation. Are there any other questions on the fare increase to align with WMATA?
There are. Commissioner Furman, go ahead.
On the subject of the fare increase, I understand aligning with WMATA, but I would caution we do need to do what we can to help our cash riders. There are a surprising number of people on the routes I regularly take who pay with cash. We need to ensure that our card readers and the machines that accept cash at the entrance are in good working order. Our machines seem to regularly malfunction at a rate far beyond WMATA's in my experience. And I'll just ask you, Mr. Edwards, what can we do to improve that situation and ensure that all the riders who want to pay their fare are able to do so seamlessly?
So when you're saying the malfunction, is it on for those that are trying to pay with coins, or is it at those cash passengers that are trying to use single dollar bills?
Definitely dollar bills seems to be the bigger problem. Coins, much less so. I
Okay.
have concerns about, enough people carrying coins on them that we realistically will collect $2.25 instead of $2 per rider. But the pain point is definitely more with the accepting of the bills.
Mm-hmm. Well, as we move to this, and since we would now be collecting 15 cents on the senior person with disabilities, that we would work with our maintenance crew to do some level of a service blitz on all of the fare boxes, just to, as we approach this, make sure they're in all good working order and that they're functioning properly, so that since we will be receiving more coins than I'm sure we currently receive, that they all are working functioning. But I will take it back to our maintenance team to try to get a better handle on the malfunctioning that you're seeing as far as as far as the bill collector is concerned.
No, thank you. And I think that would help our own ridership numbers as well, because again, it's on a daily basis. I see drivers waving in passengers who are struggling to pay, but they just want them to get seated so that they can keep moving on the route. So I appreciate any efforts on that.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Commissioner Hussein, go ahead.
Would this, oh my gosh, I had a question, lost my train of thought. Hold on. Right. Will this have any impact on the student program? I think it was effective last month, 2 months ago. I don't know what month it is. January, for students to ride free. Is that going to be impacted at all by this?
There will be an impact, and it's the second half of it. Students that are APS students that have their registered iRide card, they will continue to ride for free. Students without an iRide card, their fare will increase from the dollar that they pay now to up to $1.15. So students that have their iRide card, their experience will not change.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Excellent, because my son uses the heck out of that program.
We are excited there. Has he been able to use any of the allowed WMATA routes as of yet?
So far, yes. Just most recently, last Sunday, I think he rode the 22A.
Okay, excellent.
But before that, it was just all art all the time, because that's what goes where he needs to go, which is from Columbia Pike to Lee Harrison. So now he knows how to ride the 42 and the 51 and the 55 and the 45.
Excellent. I love to hear it.
Any other questions?
Okay.
What's that? Commissioner Moravec, go ahead.
Hi. So as far as I understand, these fare increases will be going to plug a hole in the budget, or will any of it go to improving service, because the on-time service has been declining quite a bit? I know we had, some inclement weather relative to last year, but I mean, I think January was like 73% overall for our transit. So would any of this money be going to improving that?
No, it would not be. These funds are going to cover the increase in the operating of the services.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Any final thoughts, questions? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards.
You're very welcome. You all have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. And that concludes our agenda for the evening officially. And I don't have any other business.
I don't believe I do either. Except I did want to ask, didn't we, so we delayed adoption of the TC meeting schedule, and then we adopted it. But I thought we delayed it because we didn't want to have Transportation Commission on Halloween.
That
we-
is correct.
Did we find a new date?
We did.
Okay.
Did I not send it?
Yes,
out
no,
to you
you're right.
guys?
Monday, the 28th.
Yes.
Coolio. All right. I think it just has not been updated on the
Website.
on the website, on the agendas list. I was like, I just saw it on the 31st. Yeah, on the website, it's still wrong. Okay, cool. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, then we are adjourned before 8 p.m.
Our next meeting is May 2nd.